So in honor of spooky season, we'll make a witch hat. So I've got a bunch of leather. I'm making a green hat. Like I said, it's a witch hat. We've decided to go as witches for Halloween. I have my hat from the Ren Fair, and I love this thing, and it fits perfect. So this is what I am modeling the whole size on. It's going to be a relatively easy project. We're going to start out hand stitching, and then we'll see where we go from there. It's couch leather, it's chrome tan, so it should be easy to stitch. Let's pull everything in, and I'll go through the whole process. This is a piece I'm using for the brim. It's got this double stitching that I really like. I'm probably going to carry that over into the back of the hat too, because I really like how that looks. It's kind of neat. But it's going to define how big my brim can be, which is huge at this point. Because I think we're at like 20 inches. 20 inches sounds about right. So all I'm going to do is mark a circle 20 inches all the way around and cut it out. Since I have my middle point here, I just put my 10 inch mark, and I'm just traveling around, put a mark, put a mark, use some kind of a weird template. I mean, it's a witch hat. It's actually, you can get really good templates for these things just all over the internet. Way too easy a project to not do it on my own. So like I said, I'm just lining everything up with this center point. It doesn't have to be exact. If it's a little off, it's a little off. It's not, you know, some super pristine thing I'm working on. Silly little Halloween costume. And more than likely, my teenager is going to appropriate this for me after Halloween. So, you know, I'm okay with it. If you're not good at making circles, make more dots. Just measure more spots. I'm expecting this to be a pretty simple, pretty fast project. No need to overcomplicate anything, especially not something this easy. So now I'm just going to cut it out, and we'll get back together in a second. It's just a little bigger than that. So like I said, I really like how this fits, and I want to mirror that as much as I can. So to facilitate that, I'm going to copy it. Not copy exact, because there's a lot of subtle nuances that I'm going to have to go through to make everything work right, but just the rough hat shape. Like I said, there are tons and tons of patterns online on how to make witch hats that are really fantastic. It's way too simple a process to not just do it myself. Now I'm just making an oval shape that's a little smaller than this, because there needs to be seam allowance. In fact, that's even a little too big side to side. That looks perfect. So if this were to, because the stitch is here, if this were to flare out, it would come to about there. This may be just a touch too big, but I'm okay with that. Cut out the very center so I can see where my chalk line is. That lets me know exactly where to line this up and mark everything. When I'm showing someone how to sew, there's a couple simple questions they always ask. Like, do you cut on the inside or the outside of the chalk? In this situation, since this is the size I want to cut on the inside of the chalk. I want to leave the chalk on the fabric, because if I'm tracing it, the chalk is on the outside of the piece I want to keep, so I want to keep it there. Small sanity check, just to make sure I'm pretty close to where I want to be. About 23? No, 23. So that's exactly where I want to be. I'm going to give myself a little extra seam allowance here, maybe ½ inch all the way around. So the outside line is my stitch line, the inside line is my my remove line. Don't cut your fingers. So most of us put our hand underneath and we hold it there and then we cut. Not really thinking. Next thing you know, you gotta go get a Band-Aid. Should be a little snug. I think that'll work. Now for the part that's going to define the shape of the hat. Don't pay any attention to the chalk that's there, because that was absolutely wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. Not paying attention. I want a nice sharp edge here. So we're going to measure the full length from this corner up to the top, which is going to be 17.5. In fact, we're going to cut this whole edge off so we have a nice, clean, sharp edge to work with. And I'm just going to go along the stitch line. Now we're going to go since this is 17.5, we're going to go 17.5 this way, which takes us to about here. We're going to do the same thing, cutting along this edge. We're going to make a big arc. This is with extra seam allowance because I want a nice thick seam so it folds easier. This arc should be pretty close to the 23 to 24 I'm looking for my hat size, plus seam allowance. And right now it's at 27. So if I do an inch or an inch seam allowance. It's about right. Maybe a little big. I'll be able to fix it from there though. So that gives me a hat kind of like that. It's a little big as it's supposed to be, because once you connect the two pieces together and flare it down, it'll be about right. It is chrome tanned leather, so it's not going to take shaping well, but once it's stitched to a thing, it'll be fine. And when I tried this on, I was very unhappy with it. It seemed a little too tight, so I'm going to go back to the full 24 inches. If it's too big, it's not that big of a deal. I can always add a band to tighten it up a little bit. If it's too tight, it's just not comfortable. That's still pretty snug. Once we put the second piece in, it should be perfect. While we're here, we're going to measure, find out what we need. Because I want something a little more exact than, well, about, that's 21 and a half. So this needs to be 24. So now if I cut this off at the exact, if I cut the excess off at a straight angle from this point, it's going to give me my sharp 90 degree I want for the flare. I have a 1-inch stitch line, which I'm just going to completely transfer over to both sides. It's a little snug, which is what we want, because once it flares out, it should fit perfect. But just for fun, I'm going to give myself another inch. The ability to adapt. It's the only thing that separates us from the animal kingdom. It's not fillets, it's the ability to adapt. I think that feels perfect. This this leather's thin enough, I can stitch it with my sewing machine. I haven't decided whether I'm going to or not, but I can. I could also just drill a bunch of holes and hand stitch it. We all know how I feel about that. So I'm gonna grab my sewing machine. Cerulean green looks fine. I planned on hand stitching the whole thing, right? I don't know what I was thinking. I've met me. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get the sewing machine. Why? Because I hate hand stitching. So I'm still gonna stitch 1 inch all the way along. We're gonna snip the end. Like I said, I want to emulate this stitch pattern. So I think I'm just gonna run a piece through and keep changing the settings until I get one I like. I'm going to, on my machine, that is a 5, which I believe is it's not 5mm, that's crazy. It might be 5mm. Stupid. Hold on. Forgot something very simple and important. When sewing multiple pieces of leather, switch over to a leather needle. I picked up a bunch of leather needles because I knew what we were doing. Alright, my automatic threader doesn't want to work. It makes me wonder if I have this in the right position. Pardon me for a minute while I try and fix this. Not quite sure what it is, but something seems off. I have a feeling I installed the needle wrong. It might have been turned a little bit because it's now working fine and my automatic threader worked fine. It's usually a good litmus test, the automatic needle threader. If your machine has them and it's not working right, there could be something wrong with how you have the needle in, which was the problem in my case. Now with a leather needle, let's see if that makes a difference. Just didn't like to start. It got there. So I'm gonna end up rubbing thinner on this so I get a nice raw edge, and probably just gluing a piece all the way along just so I know that it's nice and secure. Maybe grab a hammer. Be right back. Yeah, we're at the hammer stage of leather work. If you're doing this, make sure you have a smooth hammer, not a waffled hammer. See what I mean? A wider seam is way easier to control than a narrow seam. I may get a piece of fabric and just try and machine stitch all the way down. I can probably only get to about here. Yeah, I think we're just at the glue stage. Let me set up a glue station and we'll pick this up in a minute. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna glue these two seams against the rough sides. So I'm just using simple contact cement. This is a very nicely finished desk, except it's got paint on it now because I left it in a garage for too long. So since I have to refinish it anyway, I'm a lot less worried about getting glue on it because I absolutely will. Keep that in mind. Whatever you're doing, if you're gonna mess with like contact cement, A, well ventilated area, and B, be prepared to have everything covered in glue for a little while. So I'm just going to apply a bunch of glue along here, along the seam, so I can fold it outward. I'm not worried about the extra stuff because once it's dry, it's just dry. I have a real hard time not doing everything 100%, you know? Like, why have a foam thing when I can have a full solid brass thing? And that's a horrible way to think about things. I'm trying to break myself of that habit. This whole thing doesn't have to be hand stitched. It doesn't have to last the test of time. It's a hat. For Halloween, sometimes good enough is good enough. I'm not quite there, but I'm getting a little better. Right? Shades of gray now. I'm probably going to end up gluing most of this hat. I've got the main seam stitched. That's all I need for now. So now I'm going to let this cure for a little while. until everything tacks up right. And as soon as it does, I'll lay it flat. I'll bring you right back. Probably about 10 minutes. Glue has cured. Let's see what we get this time. Now I'm going to cut a strip this length and this shape. We'll be back in a minute. So I have a strip. It's cut about the right length. I'm going to hit this leather with a little bit of paint thinner. The glue doesn't really want to stick to the top because the top's been conditioned. It's got all kinds of weird stuff in it. A little bit of paint thinner tends to take that right off. It removes all the waxes and the sealants and all the stuff that, you know, you want in a nice leather couch, but you don't necessarily want in a nice leather hat. So now I'm just going to wait for this to dry, which could take a couple of hours. As soon as it's done, I'm going to coat both sides with contact cement and just glue it down. And then we'll pick back up after that. Thin coat of contact cement. And the same thing on the inside. So on the inside, I have my my seam that's folded over. I'm just going to put contact cement all along there. So I'm going to give it like 10 minutes, let everything cure, put it all back together. Glue has had time to cure. All I'm going to do is put this piece down on top of this piece. I've already put the wire in there. I don't know if you can see it. There's a slight wire in there, the little twisted one. This I'm just going to feed in, put down, and then work my way back. All right, the strip here. Hold on, let's refocus for a second. All right, this strip that I just added is going to seriously reinforce the seam right there. As soon as this glue is fully set up, which takes a while, by the way. Yeah, there's nothing that's going to be able to pull that seam apart. That's going to be set. I don't have to worry about whatever the teenager decides to do. It's not gonna affect the hat. The hat will last for a very long time. Contact cement is a viable seam alternative in this case. I'm probably gonna use it to hold the brim on and then stitch on top of it. Again, because it'd be hand stitching, and I don't feel like hand stitching. But now I'm just gonna let the glue fully cure and do its thing, and we'll pick this back up in a little bit. We're doing the hat brim in 2 steps. Step 1 is going to be to glue it. I'm going to glue the whole thing down, then I'm going to stitch it. That way I don't have to worry about holding things in place. I want a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I'm going to mark 1/2 inch all the way around the whole thing. You don't need to watch me mark things. We've seen that before. And if you haven't seen me mark things before, welcome to my channel. Maybe like and subscribe. And we're going to do the same thing to the hat. Just going to mark 1/2 inch all the way around. The way this goes is this part is going to be in contact with this part. Wrong side on the hat, right side on the top. Wrong side on the brim, right side on the hat. It's going to get probably a brim of some kind, a wrap of something or other. So I don't have to be perfect with it. We'll do what we can. Just like the inside of the hat, we are going to use contact cement. So I'm just going to spread contact cement everywhere that I just put chalk. They make brushes for this stuff that work fantastic. If we're going to do a lot of contact cementing, I recommend investing in them. Alright, we're going to set that aside, let it cure, move on to the next piece. Now when I put all this together, I'm going to have to remember the seam goes in the back. Alright, we're going to give this 10 minutes now. See you in a few seconds. I think we're ready. So I'm going to start with the back. We've got to make sure which one's the back. This is the back, and this is the back. I'm just going to carefully connect the 2 back pieces. Just going to start in the back and contact the cement. And work my way around. Before I get too far, I'm going to fold the hat directly in half and mark where the front is. Something I should have done a while ago. So the front should be right about here. Well, everything seems to line up pretty good. So let's hit it with a hammer. Now I'm going to let this do its thing, probably overnight. Give it a good couple hours to cure. I hated that. This thing didn't sew right, it didn't look right, it puckered weird. It was, I absolutely hated that. So we're going to switch gears, do something just a little different. So we're marking up 1 inch from the edge all the way around the brim, and we're just going to fold it and stitch it. 1 inch should be enough to, that if I want, I can probably, as long as I stitch on the edge, I can still slip. So I should still be able to slip this in between after I stitch, so I can still have a nice secure wire in there. We'll see. And we'll see together. So I'm gonna mark 1 inch all the way around and then just fold it and stitch. I could drill a bunch of holes and just hand stitch it. So this reinforcing has to come out, because I'm not gonna be able to fold and stitch at the same time. So we're gonna pop this off real quick. This isn't quite boning, but it adds just enough extra that it's hard to stitch. So I'm gonna start right before the seam here, continue over to right after the seam. Smart thing to do is to wet form it, but we're not gonna start that now. Just a little at a time, work my way. That's not bad. Same thing as last time. So I may go back a little farther this time. I don't like seam ripping. I don't like these things. I prefer a razor blade. I don't know why I keep grabbing the stupid seam ripper. I think it's because I'm on camera and, you know, it's the right thing to do. That's what a professional would do, would use a seam ripper. Professionals. I ain't a professional. That's not bad. See if we can fit a wire in. But that's a mostly. That's not bad. This is loose enough that I should be able to fit the wire right through here and feed it all the way around. We're gonna find out in a minute. So that worked out way better than I expected. I had to split both seams to feed the wire through, but I did get the wire all the way through. So now I'm gonna re-sew this with my cording foot on. I'm just gonna fold it over and stitch just there, and that's about done. I'm also gonna stitch all the way around the brim. It doesn't need it, but I want it just for, you know, security's sake. I hate the ribbon. I don't like it. But it's good enough for now. I love this hat. It turned out perfect. Yeah, the wire, get a little more pinch that I added in the beginning, definitely helps it keep its shape. This, the exterior wire, oh my goodness. So that I still need to trim up a couple little lines, maybe do a little more stitching here and in the back, but for the most part it's done. And I really like how it turned out. It is fantastic. It's pretty neat. It wasn't too difficult to do. You never know what you can do until you do it. And then you know. So thanks for sticking to the end. I appreciate it. Quick and easy. I guess I'll see you next week. A ponytail makes it sit weird. I don't know why, but I always go weird cowboy-esque whenever I put a hat on.